What is up, folks? It is the High Tech Podcast. That's right. It's another week with technology, nerddom stuff. That was probably a better way to say that. And, clunky sentences. That's what we're known for at the High Tech Podcast. I'm Josh Swartz, one of the hosts here at the High Tech Podcast, joined by my fellow host, friend, partner, but not in that way, Will Illingworth. Will, how you doing, man?
Thanks for clarifying for all to know. Yes, business partner. Great. We're doing good, my friend. We're here. We've got episode 168 ahead of us. I'm pretty excited for this one. But before we get into that stuff, I guess.
Yeah, before we a couple things. You're listening to the High Tech Podcast brought to you by Harness Tech, and this is the beginning of season 8. Also known as where we really ramp things up. You know, the last 7 seasons have just been coasting. You know, we were just going by our laurels. Season 8, though, is where it gets crazy. No, season 8, you can expect a lot more fun. If you're thinking the season breakups are arbitrary, you're right, but deal with it. Welcome to the High Tech Podcast. Yeah, we're excited to kick off this season. Just a few reminders if you're listening to us for the first time, or if you've been listening to us and basically stalking us on the internet and not following our follow recommendations. Here's a couple notes about us, the High Tech Podcast. We have social media and places that you listen to us, and sometimes it's to connect with us there, you know. So make sure to check us out on the socials. You can find us either High Tech Podcast or High Tech Pod, whichever one. We know there's different ones. Just search it. You know, we believe in you.
If I could make it easy, I would. Sorry, folks. Yeah. It just is what it is.
Actually, Will actively said, I will make it not easy. So we could have made
I'm going to add a third handle soon.
Yeah. We're going to change our socials from @High Tech Podcast to @making it difficult for you forever. That's what our @mention's going to be. No, make sure to follow us on social media. We have lots of stuff we're posting on social media, stuff you can check out from the High Tech Podcast, clips, fun things. Chris, who's been on the podcast a couple times now.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. Social media manager. He posts lots of great stuff, so you want to make sure to check that out by following us on social media. And also, don't forget, if you're listening to us wherever it is, on YouTube, any podcast platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Overcast, again, still don't actually know what that is, whatever
it is.
It's fine. Wherever you're listening to us, make sure to subscribe and follow the podcast so you can get updates on what's happening. And we know that people are out there. It'd be great. You know, the internet's a weird thing. Sometimes you just don't know, are there people there? You know? So make sure to do that.
I was just talking with some friends today about the internet, and I was talking to them about some of my activities at the age of 13 when I was running anime sites and doing all sorts. And they're like, oh, so like, how did you guys like do stuff and share things? I was like, well, we used IRC. And they're like, Mercy goes, was that like a pre-Discord? I was like, IRC is like a pre-Discord? I don't even know. But getting down that lane of thought, I was like, holy smokes, the internet has some weird places to be, and there are some you can't even find all the people. There's no way. You just have to know where to try and find them. There's too many rocks to look under. So if you want to know too much about me, you can go find my old IRC channels, and then the end. That would be the end right there. But thankfully, I think they're probably closed. So, or
just go follow the podcast. That would be great too. Just go do that first, and then go on your search for whatever Will was doing with anime on the internet. You can also hit us up if you'd like to talk to us at inbox @hightechpod.us. You know, if you want to be on the podcast, you have a topic you want us to talk about, you want to let us know how great our hair looks. I don't know, whatever you'd like to do. You can hit us up at inbox @hightechpod.us. Many guests who've been on the podcast, they started with that step of the email.
We love it.
It's great. Some of them wrote it with AI. It was fine. It's all good. But they've been on the podcast. So also check out our website, hightechpod.us. We put an episode page and lots of fun resources up there for you with every episode. With that, we got that out of the way. You know, the man wants us to talk about that stuff, which is funny because the man is Will and I. That's it.
We're under our own thumb.
We're under our own thumb. But this week on the High Tech Podcast, kicking off season 8 of the podcast, we are excited to bring on Bryan Olendijk onto the podcast. We've been trying to get Bryan on for a little while. He's an old acquaintance of Will's from his higher ed days. But Bryan, man, guys, this episode is a crazy one. This is one of those ones where we've recorded it ahead of time, and it's a wild one. So for a little bit of context before you jump into this episode, I want to get you ready, right? So get your popcorn, get your drink, whatever that may look like, and strap yourself in, because we're in for a little bit of a wild journey. Okay, we're going to be talking about something called headless authoring, and we're going to be talking about HTML and a lot of technical things here, but all for a purpose. I think, Will, you and I have talked about this before, and I've dug into this actually on our side, as anybody listening to this podcast who has to create content on the internet and maintain it, whether that's across courses, across websites, whatever that may be. Authoring stuff on the internet is not as easy as we'd all like it to be. And it's not as synonymous across different platforms, different devices as we'd like it to be. I think it's probably the easiest way to say it. And so there's this concept that's been happening a lot in the world of authoring and creating stuff on the internet that I first discovered through instructional design, of kind of this idea of headless authoring, creating content where you can be typing in live what you want and see it start to form for you, and kind of like develop an experience, a user experience or a learning experience in a fun live way without having to know a whole bunch of code and HTML and stuff like that, right? To get to that, though, people have to consider a lot of code, HTML, and things to get you there, right? So
Smart people.
Yes, smart people. Bryan has done that. Bryan, now having a group called HAX that he is from, has done this in certain ways, and Will got to see that experience firsthand when he was at his institution. But Bryan's come a long way since Will's even looked at it last as well. Wow. And in this episode, we'll break down for us a little bit kind of what he's done at the technical side, and then have some fun showing you what's happening in the episode. So my little spiel before this is stick through the technical stuff if that's something that doesn't excite you like Will and I do. Because I do think it's helpful to know how things work on the internet. It's not magic. There's a lot of stuff that happens in the back end. And Bryan not only talks about how to make things easier to create, but I think has a really cool goal, which is to make the internet more accessible and make it easier for people to be creative and create something on the internet without, as he would probably put it, a lot of companies who want money. Bryan has a really cool way of breaking this down. So with that said, let's swing over to Bryan and take a look at HAX and what they're doing.
There it is, folks. We are with Bryan Olendijk, otherwise known as BTO Pro. Am I right there? That's the that's the pseudonym. Wonderful. Thank you for joining us. Well, I didn't know. It could be B Top Row, or it could be B Top Row.
B Top Row. No one has called me B Top Row before.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's his rapper name.
Yeah, that's my
B Top Row.
Thank you for joining us, Bryan. It's been a few years since we last talked, but last time we were talking, I was actually a staff member and instructional designer at Penn State University as well, specifically the Harrisburg campus. You are at the larger campus, or do you work for World? I don't even know. Who even knows anymore? With Penn
Who
State,
even knows? Like, what do I even
work there?
I don't know. Don't tell anyone.
We're excited to go ahead.
I work at University Park.
Yeah.
So that's the main campus, or whatever you want to think of it, where the football games are played, in College of Arts and Architecture.
Good. And we will refrain from any and all chants. I prefer not to be cultish in my behavior, if that's all right with you.
No, we are.
Oh, savage.
Sorry about that. No, we won't chant.
We're going to get into some fun and crazy technical stuff. I'm actually excited to maybe stoke a little bit of the ed tech joker out of you, because I love the philosophy I've seen in the past and some of the conversations we've had about HAX and your work and your philosophy. But before we go deep, would you mind just giving everybody a little bit of some basics here? Oh, there he is. And he's gone. For if you're not watching the podcast, folks, you wouldn't have missed a little Joker bobblehead. I forget what those are called.
Yeah, there's a Funko Pop.
Funko Pop, there it is. But those for listening now, what's your background? How did you get into education? And we're going to get into a bunch of technical stuff, but how did you get specifically aligned with like a technical background and that kind of work?
So I went to Penn State in the College of Information Sciences and Technology from 2002 to 2006. So I was among it wasn't the first, but among one of the earlier graduating classes of that college's existence.
Okay.
But I'd been doing web development since I was in, I think, 7th grade. So I had a 486DX laptop. That's some serious horsepower back in the day.
Wow.
And I had a very thick book. If you're just listening, it's like at least 3 inches thick book that was like, this is HTML. And so I read through that on a supposed laptop that weighed like 15 pounds and had about 20 minutes of battery life, and learned how to make my own website from that book. And then didn't really do anything with that for like 5 years. But like it was always sort of like I joined like web development clubs and things. So it was always sort of like a passive interest of mine. And then I graduated with my degree and then immediately turned around and went back to grad school. And so in grad school, I got offered a job here pretty quickly. I was on an assistantship. And after about 6 months of the assistantship, my mentor at the time, his name is Dr. Keith Bailey. He was looking at what I was doing and was like, yeah, we need someone to do this full time. And what I was doing was we were putting on online courses for Penn State that went out through the World Campus, and everyone was doing this in HTML. And so you would hire someone and they would hand code a template in Dreamweaver, and then the editors or instructional designers would then hand write HTML, and it would go in the body area. And after a year, you'd be lucky if you had one website. And
that practically sounds like using a typewriter to write a book. Like to make an analog, literally to an analog to a digital, like you're saying you hand wrote websites, hand wrote learning courses.
Yeah. And so what sent me down this rabbit hole was I was doing some unrelated project. I forget, it was doing some database visualization for like a grant or something. And my boss came in one day and he was like, hey, can you help me? Do you know JavaScript? It's like, yeah, Keith, like this entire interface is written in JavaScript. Like, do you have any idea what I do over here? He's like, no, okay. Can you help me debug this? And he was writing the JavaScript that did the pagination in the website to know what page you were on. And I was like, hold the phone here. You're the director. Why are you touching code? And he's like, well, this is what we have to do. Is there a better way to leverage something? And I said, well, I know I've heard of this thing. It's called a content management system. And like I had used Drupal in undergrad for a project. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that what you guys are doing, like writing HTML, I think this could like automate much of that. And so I got very interested in that just idea. And so I had nothing to do that weekend. And so that's what I did is I largely got one of their courses to be a Drupal site in 48 hours with the template and everything. And I came back in and showed him on Monday, and he was like, so you're going to want a job here, right? Can we get you to just work on this?
We want you to have a job here.
Yes. So I made a system called Elms. At the same time, I was doing my graduate research. My graduate research largely stemmed from seeing how I was able to get Drupal to spread at Penn State. And so we went from this place not being very friendly to Drupal and open source technologies to 8 years later, because it took me that long to publish my research, Drupal being de facto. And part of the reason it took so long to publish my research is people started to realize what I was doing. So the research was actually social research, and it was around getting people to adopt a technology if I gave it to them for free.
Interesting.
And so
Interesting.
I went around and gave people these free systems or very cheap systems so that we could form a community, because I didn't have anyone to talk to around this technology. And so the research followed how I was able to distribute this technology to form communities so that we could have a more sustainable development base as opposed to everybody individually handwriting HTML.
That sounds, and forgive me if I'm off base, but that sounds like making your own GitHub. Like you were trying to create a community of folks who were building content or elements of this system that then you would all get to use, share, refine, improve. Am I off base?
Generally speaking, yeah. So like I think over 100 module contributions to Drupal.
Wow.
As a result of those efforts. For the longest time, I was sort of known as like the Drupal and education guy. I'd go around and get other universities doing this because I wrote very openly about how I was able to get other groups to use Drupal so that we could collaborate on process and workflow and code distribution. So that was like BTO Pro 1.0. And then when my research finished and was published, and some people got not super happy with it, it's because it's written in the first and third person simultaneously. So you said you wanted to channel the Joker. So part of the research is that there's this character in the research that goes around and gets people to adopt this, knowing full well that if you give away a box of kittens, people now need to maintain kittens.
And your kitten is the system.
And your kitten is the system. Okay, I see it.
So,
this is getting very jokery for sure. I'm getting.
So,
I don't know whether to be concerned or like
excited.
Just excited. Like I both respect and go, I'm so glad I wasn't part of that experiment. I'm just joking.
I mean, at the same time, we had an institution that hadn't really standardized on any content management system. There were several different solutions out there. And so like I kind of built up this like moniker that was a little bit more like, like you're like a bit off. But it was for a positive social purpose. Like we formed a community where we could better sustain and support institution grade content management system sorts of projects. Okay. I mean, now there's hundreds of Drupal sites around here, which I don't have any affiliation with anymore.
Oops.
But the point is like you really facilitated a change at a big level at your institution through giving out this technology and through experimenting and through playing around with it and using it and you got to do a whole research off of it that now I want to read as well. I will just throw that out there because it's in first and third person. I must see this. And I must find a way to get AI to read it for me in only the Joker voice. But that's aside. Either that or I become best friends with Mark Hamill and he reads it to me next to a fireplace.
Yes.
Sipping something, I don't know. One of those options. But okay, so this is all happening, right? And you're doing this. Now, what brings you to what we're here to talk about, right? Which is HAX. What gets you there, right?
Yeah.
What part of that journey gets you there?
So in 2015, I published my research. That had been my life basically for the previous 8 years, was just building this community, giving stuff away, documenting it, building stuff, documenting, building community, helping organize events. And then it hit around 2015 and there was then sort of this like emptiness after about 6 months where it was like, I'm not researching anything anymore. And I've been doing nothing but research for almost a decade at some level. So we went to a conference and there was like 6 of us there, I think. It was a Drupal event. And it was sort of like, what's like going to be the next big thing? Like, because we've been doing Drupal now for like a decade. So like, that's not the next thing, right? Like there has to be something that would be after that. And we envisioned a way of editing the web that didn't involve systems. It was just on the front end. Component architecture had been a concept that had been discussed since about 2010, 2012-ish. And so like you're starting to see these block ecosystems that front-end developers could use to sort of quickly stitch things together, but it was still very technical. And so we kind of envisioned, okay, could we make those blocks in such a way that an editor could just place the blocks? We had technologies like CK Editor, like TinyMCE, which for those unfamiliar, if you've edited content in Canvas, you're using TinyMCE. Like it's a very popular text authoring tool. Very easy for developers like me to integrate. A little more complicated to write plugins for, just because like it forces you into certain UX patterns that aren't the best, in my opinion. And so wrote this napkin idea down, didn't do anything with it. And then like it would just sit there. Like I had I don't know what I did with the paper, but like I had the paper, and like this idea would just come up when I would need like a palette cleanse from what I was working on. Like, I'm going to see if I can't do that. And I'd get a little further down the line with my jQuery plugins, which is a very popular, but just very outdated way of structuring JavaScript. And it would never get there. And in 2016, still doing it, never get there. So we go back to this same event. It's 2 years later now. And this idea comes up again because we're showing now we've adopted component architecture in our applications. And we don't feel like we're experts, but yet at this event, everybody is like, wait, you're using component architecture to build applications so that people can headlessly make content. And so for clarity, people at that time were making websites. They use these blocks so that you, the end user, can see the website, right? It just makes it easier for them to build the website, okay? Right. And then you get standardization in visuals. What we were doing is we were building new interfaces for content authors to hit like add content and then fill out a form. And that was all the components. And then hit save. And then it was submitting to the website. And then it would render back out as components. And so we weren't really building in Drupal anymore. We were building this like ecosystem above Drupal that talked to Drupal. And we went to this conference to get feedback on it. And everyone there was like, you're
the next thing.
we're not even close to that. And so we went back to the hotel room and I was like, my buddy, Mike Potter, was like, Bud, like, I know that this is the direction to go. We're not in the right room right now. Like we're not around the right crowd. I don't know how to get, like, I need challenged on these ideas because like, this is, I can tell you right now, not a sustainable way of building. And he's like, I know, that's why I've been telling you to look at web components. And I'm like, that's what we're looking at, buddy. I'm looking at components. And he's like, no, you're looking at a component library. I'm talking about a web standard. And finally, I sat still long enough, not going to events and like, preparing talks or writing Drupal modules, which is a very different job, type of job from what I'm describing. I just sat down and he sent me this video. He watched this video and we're just hanging out, hotel room, having a few beers after an event. And like, as I'm watching this guy from Google describe this technical approach, I'm like, I can build that thing that was on the napkin. I can build anything now.
Oh.
And so what the web component standard is, it is a standard way for developers to author new HTML tags. And so instead of making, we have paragraphs, we have bolded text, we have headings, we have tables, right? You guys,
which are all elements people were used to seeing those on, like when you're looking at a website.
You're in. Yeah,
that's the visual representation.
If you're one of the fortunate people whose job it is to go into Canvas and hit view source because there's actually an accessibility issue in that content, and then modify the HTML, that's what I'm talking about, right? But this standard allows any developer to define new HTML tags that the browser interprets in a standards-driven way. And so let me give you, that sounds absurd, but let me give you an example. There is a video player, all right? And so the video player looks a certain way. You've probably gone on like X or Facebook or Instagram. Like everybody has a different video player, right?
Yep.
And if you were to right click in your browser and inspect, you would see HTML. And that HTML would look like a series of just random stuff, to be perfectly honest. But if you right click the video player in our application, you see a new HTML tag that you've never seen before, probably, that says video-player. And why that's important is that video-player has a standard way that I can deliver that definition to your screen and that it looks the same way every time. And so inside that video-player tag, a whole bunch of HTML unfurrows, and you get a consistent user experience.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm processing it. My brain is fried a little bit, thinking through.
No, I am, and I'll do some connection points with what you were just saying. Like if I go to Facebook and I hit play on something, like when you say video player, that is the play button, the pause button, the volume button, the captions button, the full screen, all that junk. Whether or not you sometimes it doesn't have that, right? You go over to YouTube. You've got the plus 10 seconds to skip forwards or plus 30 seconds to skip forward. You've got the 2x speed. All those features, what you're saying in traditional context, or if I inspect those on those websites, are going to give me the library's definition or just the dictionary definition of hundreds of little tags and things. But if I go to your website and click on your video player, right, it's just going to say video - hyphen, and that's one library of a consistent set of features.
Yes, it's a so it's a standard of the browser that if I point to a file that is a JavaScript file that has video - player, it says this provides the definition for video player. I can ship that to your website. Even today, we have technologies that do that in our suite, and it will look the exact same way as it looks on my website. It'll look that same way in a Drupal site, a WordPress site, a static web page. It doesn't matter. And this is fundamentally different from the component libraries of before, because you had to learn a specific thing to build a specific full application.
Right.
So
if I want those different pieces, I have to call those different components, the fast forward, the slow, the this or that. And that's why it gets so stacked, because YouTube or whomever is building it component by component, and they're arranging it. And that's what we see. It looks like one thing to us, but it's a compilation of hundreds of things. Whereas yours is one thing. And when it comes to standards, a standards driven world, the idea that I'm here is then I, as a novice coder with the most simple, my large form of coding was that person you just referred to, going into Canvas, viewing source, fixing the accessibility problem. Yeah. But I could put that video - player tag in anywhere that I'm, and it could work to pull your player in with my video.
As long as you can get the definition of what that is there, right? So yes, that's the idea. All right, so we're at that.
I'm tracking to this point.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Tracking.
Okay. So we didn't start there, because if you were to inspect our video player, you'll see we do have a play button, and that play button has an icon. And so as a web developer for a long time, there's always these debates of how do we send icons to the end user? Is it a font that has iconography in it? Is it an SVG? Is it a PNG? Like, what type of file format is it to get it to you? Okay. So that would involve needing ways of integrating that. But using our approach, we make a new HTML tag. It's called simple -icon. All right. We ship you the definition of that tag, and then we're able to build an API for that tag. So when we want icons, we make simple -icon space icon equals HAX : H1. And that will generate the appropriate icon relative to that. Okay. So now we've created a pathway to send icons to you. All right. And that's not important. However, I'm going to use that icon in a button. And so I'll make simple icon button, and I'll take that icon and I'll stuff that tag into that tag, because I can use components in components.
Right.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'll take that and I'll stuff that in my video player. And then I'll take that and I'll stuff that in a content management system. And then I'll take that. It allows us this Russian nesting dolls approach that HTML has always afforded us, except we're no longer putting a paragraph in a div in a table. We're putting highly semantic, gigantic interpreted pieces together. And so our team in 2015, I mentioned this was like an idea. And by 2017, I took 3 weeks off of work to completely rewrite what my career was. So I canceled all projects, and I said, I must learn how to do things this way. And so we actually adopted the web component standard before it had stabilized in the browser. I banked this much of my future career on this. Whoa. So we started writing code in 2017 that had not stabilized in convention until 2019.
Whoa.
Now, we shipped stuff during that time and we made enhancements.
Working.
Okay, working, but a lot like basically fighting the standard just to get this stuff out the door. And in 2019, all the browsers started to accept that this tag, if loaded this way, equals this thing. Okay. All right. So it's adorable to make icons and buttons, and I teach that in class. However, at this point, I believe we've made 515 of these tags because we've been working on this since 2017 in effect. And it's not just me, it's a bunch of other people that I've been able to kind of sucker into this mentality that if we build these
people, you gave kittens.
Yes, kittens, right? The kittens. So if we build on this technology and we think of the product we're making as enhancing the internet itself, that these tags work anywhere, we can build the correct user experience for authoring web content. And so what HAX gets up to is we have a tag called H-A-X. It's short for headless authoring experience. This was the idea we wrote down on the napkin. And what that tag does is it's able to read the definitions off of all the other tags we make and allow a user to just drag and drop them on the interface. And so even though, Will, you semantically understand what I say when I say video-player, I don't want you to ever look at code. I don't want to ever look at code. I don't want humanity to need to code in order to put themselves on the internet, because the alternative is social networking sites that took 1 second for them to get an account and download it on their phone, and then they have this limited functionality and they pay for their micro messages forever. There's no reason for it. Hosting is incredibly cheap. We can send people these definitions over our content delivery network. So basically you point to a script, we call it the magic script, and I can load any of these 500, it makes sense. I can load any of these 515 definitions remotely. And so you point to the magic script, it's 2 lines of JavaScript. And if you can load that on your system, you have access to our ecosystem.
Dang.
And so I don't want people to have to know any of this content. The last 24 minutes of recording should not be required. You should not have to learn the stuff that I learned to participate on the internet.
Yeah.
Right.
And yet that's where we are. You have to know what all these things are to be able to build simple web properties. And that's ridiculous.
Yeah. And the idea to those listening who are having initial reactions like Will and I, or just either so focused on what the heck is happening, or you're like, I didn't even know there were tags in the internet. They're tags. I thought those were just on my my sales in my stores. So for those listening to that, the possibilities then of what you're talking about is for an end user to be able to then build an experience online. This type of structure allows them to kind of plug and play components in there that they can build that experience and not be spending hours trying to figure out, because we've all been there, especially in the instructional design world, been there where it's there's an experience I want to build and I'm either locked into whatever the frick canvas gave me, which isn't great, and then or I need to know a lot of different coding components and things to kind of build out my own experience. Are you kind of
become an expert in storyline, right?
Or become an expert in storyline, which has its own wonderful, loving,
which is its own ecosystem, and therefore content always put into storyline will necessitate storyline. It's interesting. It's like we had this thing called Flash, a long time ago, and there were reasons why that was unideal. I don't know what it is. Maybe because
proprietary lockdown software for sale is a problem, what?
Right? So to your point before, though, about what you can't do in Canvas. So as I refer to it as Canvas, I don't know what product you were referring to, but in Canvas, is everything you can't do.
Savage.
Yes, it's in that text editing area, right? And so I'm not to be clear, what our technology is focused on is not full-on learning management system. Okay, that is not our space. I want you to author web content that is very high quality. And I can sort of start to blur the lines of what constitutes web content. So for example, I mentioned a video player. In the instructional design land, we have a tag called self-check. So instead of understanding to make the collapse, apply the CSS correctly, ensure that you're maintaining accessibility, just to basically have a click and reveal the answer sort of relationship in a CK editor field. You drag and drop our self-check tag on the page, you get a form that says like, well, what's the title going to be? You fill in the title, it's actually updating the associated HTML. So it's doing it in a way that's easy for
Holding
you
your
to,
hand.
yeah, that you can look at and just modify that purpose. We have multiple choice tags. We have single question tags. We have true false tags. We have matching tags. We have tagging tags. That's a tagging question. I think there's 8. Yeah, I messed this up there. We have, I believe, 8 very instructional, designed, focused things because I work in an ID shop so that we can put courses online. And so while the technology has implications for the wider web, it is ultimately focused on like course content, ebook development. But instead of going into like, say, Tiny MCE and you're writing a paragraph, you don't know it, right? You're just typing. And when you hit enter, you are actually writing HTML, right? So like this is already happening unbeknownst to you. We're just adding another layer of robustness as far as what
you can do.
Yeah, these other semantic tags. And everything that we save is HTML at the end of the day. So you're not getting locked into like an articulate way of doing business, right?
It's easily shareable then between people doing this type of dynamic, right? Is kind of what I'm understanding. You were kind of giving us a little bit of heads up as we were talking about kind of the best I could put it into, and I think you even mentioned this was like how we are sharing files and things like that. This type of dynamic is more shareable between users of being able to share content and setups. And I think you even mentioned about being able to like remix something.
Yeah,
somebody else did.
So if you start at the blocks, right? No one ever questions if so you've made that content in Canvas and you hit view source and I highlight all the stuff, the HTML tag stuff, right? If I copied that and pasted it somewhere else, there's no question that it would work.
Yeah.
Okay. But if I did that with the entire Canvas application, it obviously wouldn't work, right? Like that wouldn't make sense necessarily. However, why? Well, because they had to build the application in a certain way. And so if they built the application in the same way that you actually went and constructed that initial text, you could actually have the entire thing be portable and run your own campus, right? So in our case, as you keep building up, right? And I said it's this Russian nesting dolls approach, we get to a full technology we call HAX site. So there is a tag called HAX CMS -site -builder.
Okay.
And that is able to effectively play a like book of content, if you will, an outline structure. And so we have a CMS that lets you easily add pages, but when you're adding pages, it just creates new blank HTML files. And then when you hit edit, it just uses the HAX editor to capture that HTML structure and save it into that blank file. And so we're looking at the web as a ubiquitous file format, right? Like the advantage fundamentally of technologies like H5P, of articulate storyline, of Flash back in the day, is that I could take that file and I could download it and I could give it to you. And it would work the same way every time. And so we don't want to just do that for the individual bricks. We want to do that for the entire content experience. And so HAX sites, you can build a site on hax.psu.edu in our case, or you can run the technology locally. We have a desktop app. We have, if you're a developer, like local copies you can install. It's installable on Reclaim Cloud and Reclaim Hosting. So if you make a site, you can go into the dashboard and hit download and get a zip that is that website.
Wow.
And that works anywhere else you would throw it. But because of the way we built this, when you're making a site, I mean, I could show it if it makes it easier, but when you're making a site, you can point to any existing site that is publicly accessible, and it will take a copy of that site. And now you are working from an exact copy of what that is. Because using this principle of design of these little pieces that we keep building up from that are shipped to easy definitions, I can give you an entire website by just knowing the structure of an existing one.
Wow.
So it is a OER remixing powerhouse. Absolutely.
I was about to say, you could templatize anything. Anything can become, any website can become a template. Just swap out the pictures, swap out the text, whatever it is that made it the visual experience. Just grab the architecture, grab the skeleton, pop it here, change out stuff.
There's a lot of content management and ubiquitous sharing concepts that allow for a lot of, I think, creativity, templatizing, things that we're currently are locked down behind a lot of paywalls and things on the internet to be able to do. And there's clearly a philosophical approach to what you're doing of trying to kind of break that a bit and allow people to be able to more freely share and develop on the internet in a way that we're kind of locked down. But I'm curious, we've talked about this a little bit. You mentioned it offhandedly. I think for people listening, it'd be really cool to see, just, you said you were willing to present a little bit of what it looks like. If you could show a little bit kind of the experience, just, I think that might help some people. Like Will and I think understand this a bit more because anybody listening who's an instructional designer immediately gets excited, I think, about this idea because we've all been in some dynamic of this where we wish we had more flexibility behind how we were developing content. But like you said, this isn't just for instructional design. I mean, this is a larger thing. This is a big way of viewing how you do editing and sharing on the internet that I think is a really cool concept and idea, and something I definitely get behind. So I would just show a little bit, whatever you're willing to show.
Yeah, you should see a present button down center. That'll do the usual kind of pull up your screen, share this screen, share that screen. Feel free. I'm going to yammer for a second while you're pulling things together. One of the things that I think is really valuable about this that I've personally experienced is, what if I wanted to take my Facebook? It was something you kind of hinted at earlier. What if I wanted to take that and go somewhere else with it, right? I can't just take my Facebook content to another platform. It's stuck in Facebook. Or if I made a full brand new website somewhere on let's say Wix, right? It's kind of stuck in Wix. I can't get it out of there.
Yes.
And you might be able to, but this is something that's kind of pushing against that limit to say, you made it, Will. It's your website. It's your social experience. You should be able to take it wherever you want it.
Yes. Yes, right? You nailed it. So I have no issue with people using any of the tools that you mentioned, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's a highly technical space and you just need to get work done and meet this goal. And if that meets your objective the fastest, I totally get it. But I'm trying to stop, analyze the entire process to say, what if you could be your own Wix?
Yeah.
Because once you build it in that tool, it is locked there. And it helped you get a task done quickly. And I get that from a budgetary standpoint, it might be easy to just say this got the job done and paying X number of dollars a month, whatever. But it doesn't need to work that way. So
there are options.
Yes. So is my screen sharing on here?
Yep. Gotcha.
Okay. So HAX.edu is kind of the hub that we're leaning on. You can learn about the project. You can see that we sort of came out of hiding about 8 months ago and started saying hey, by the way, people have been using this for a few years. It's been developed in my classroom by students. And there was a lot of UX feedback along the way. So it was got 80 seconds. You can learn about HAX, all that fun stuff. Where'd it come from? Why do we have 8-bit characters? There's also a gallery of some potential things that have been made. So as far as understanding the idea of component architecture, right? If I was to just inspect anything on the web page, right? I've got divs and HTML, but you can see there's a thing called course-card here. And so that's the idea of what we're talking about, that if I were to remove that, it removes everything associated with just that instance.
Yeah.
Now, I edited that. That's not on a live website or anything. But people using that principle are then able to use the HAX editor to build really big online courses. So this is one of our courses over in Eberly College of Science, right? I've got media in the page. I've got this nice pop-up that shows me information about this. All right, we've got these little self-checks. And in other systems, right, people would have to go and write HTML. They'd be limited based on what that authorware tool does. And in ours, whenever we want to expand functionality, we just make a new web component. And so the entire way through this, even our design layer, like we have themes that are driven this way. So I know the name of some of these themes, but for example, if I change this from clean 1 to clean 2, the experience changed, but the content didn't. Yeah, sorry, I don't want to do any of those demos that freak you out too much. So
that's great. That's
if
great.
I go to HAX PSU in this case, and you can again, there's copies of this for PHP based systems, Node systems. There's a desktop version here that only works in Ubuntu at the moment. We're trying to make the web ubiquitous. So if I go to IST 256, which is my online course, all right, I've got some different pages here, can drop in, and here's the requirements, right? I tell you up front, it is unethical to pay hundreds of dollars for material that is publicly available. And so I take this philosophical stance into the development of the entire system. Every aspect of this system that you're seeing with this bar that dropped in, right? These are web components all the way down. So they're easy for us to maintain. Wow. We can retroactively update the accessibility of these things. And so let's add a page. And we want the web to feel more like playing a video game. It should be fun and engaging as opposed to like boring and locked in forever. And so if I want to add a child page, right, I get my little coin sound effect. I can hit edit, and this is the HAX editing experience, right? And so I'm editing things in one panel, but it's actually modifying HTML on the side. You can do some Notion-like things. So like if I wanted to add one of those video players, I just type video. I've got a video player added into the content. All right. All right, I can add a title for HAX. And what I'm doing anytime I do one of these operations, whether it's duplicating this item or going in and we tweak some of the colors of it. I don't know if that one implements the colors yet. We're still transitioning how colors are implemented. Oh, there it says accent gray. Sorry. There we go.
Nice.
So if I make that a purple player as if it's like EdTech Joker land, right? Or I swap out the source of the YouTube video. Like I could, go to YouTube. No, I don't want to go to YouTube. I just search YouTube right here for HAX the web, and nothing comes up with that. Really? That would be the demo I give where it doesn't go to.
Did you do it in Spanish?
I don't know what this is returning from YouTube right now, but sure, we'll go with that. Right. So instead of going to YouTube and understanding what the embed code is or what HTML is, right? I want to hit paste and you mean a YouTube video.
And it's gonna take care of you. Wow.
Right. If it's we're talking about music in an online course, and so we're going to link off to Spotify, I shouldn't need to understand the Spotify embed. There should just be the Spotify thing. And so every single thing that we add in here, and we've got, I don't know, maybe 80 or so, right? You can do lists and paragraphs and that kind of boring stuff, right? You could do, there's a 3D model. We can do embedding Wikipedia. We can iframe to old content. We can embed Discord. We can embed Twitter. We can make playlists of material. We can have tag lists of things. We can make our fun little RPG characters, because why the heck not at that point?
So you're not only showing us the Swiss Army knife, but you built the Swiss Army knife. You and your students and your community have built this thing in front of us. That is these 500 plus tags.
I love this thing so much. I can't even begin to describe my feelings right now.
Right? I mean, like, you should be able to educate the world without needing to pay for products to do so. And it should be sustainable, it should be accessible, and it should work forever. And that is a core principle of what we're building. Everything I just saved, wrote a single, very long HTML page with all these different types of questions. Oh, select the contractions in this sentence. Yeah. Oh, sweet. It's fun, right? We've got feedback. It told me that it'll is the thing. And we have a standard way of handling these questions, right? Obviously, you have to have references to what sound does the fox make, right? Students can try it again. You can put these in numerical order, and you get visual feedback that is highly accessible, that this is wrong, and then I need to try it again.
And the little RPG folks in the bottom corner, you've got
RPG guy, which was made by a collaboration of IST and arts and architecture design students. The RPG character in the top corner is actually you, but you as an avatar, so they're randomly generated. And so this content, if I wanted a duplicate of this page, then I should be able to say clone, and okay, now we have a duplicate of that page. Everything that I'm doing, if I were to view source, is just HTML.
Right.
And it's this highly semantic HTML that I could copy and paste and take with me elsewhere very easily.
And for folks who just don't have a coding background, if I understand correctly, because I'm not classically trained. Again, everything I do is novice. But when you say semantically, or when you say that it has semantic meaning, it's the point of that is it's almost legible. Like you can read it and get the meaning of what that tag is. That one tag said RPG character. You didn't have to read RPG _ A16 _ blah, blah, like, you know, a lot of coding and other things in the world have gotten so much jargon and other junk around it. You can't actually read it, but yours was like RPG character, color, size, shape, position, that it, like things that we can semantically understand. This is unlike anything.
And if I'm sarcastic, which I mean, as you know me, I am sarcastic. So if I want something to be sarcastic, I should have a tag for applying sarcasm.
I love it.
And that
Reddit needs that. Holy smokes, does Reddit need that?
Right?
It says, my gosh, it is actually there. That is amazing.
Right? And then if I need to change it, right, it should be able to do that. And we make these, you know, some of these more silly ones, honestly, like one of the first tags we made is a meme. And so the meme maker, you know, just generates top text and bottom text. Right. And if I need to, I can't do take a photo right now, but I could take a photo of my face from my webcam.
Sure. Yeah.
Or I could search, I think NASA is one of the publicly available media sources. Yeah. So if I wanted to search NASA for Saturn, and we wanted to make a funny meme about Saturn.
Wow.
Right. So and again, like we're trying to unlock a level of creativity that you would never stop in working on an online course and say like, well, is this a place where we could use humor to prove a point? And yes, if it's in a classroom and something kind of funny or interesting happens, I would stop and maybe make like a, you know, an offhand comment or something, or point to some example that someone used. And I would never think to do that because it would be too much work. I don't want you to have to, I want you to just be fluidly creative at all times. And that no matter what we've made, I can go in and I can say, I'm going to take this site and we're going to make it look like the website I made in college.
Oh my gosh, that's practically my Zanga.
So
I promise you.
I mean, like this is literally a table-based design that I made as an undergrad, and I found it on something, and I said, all right, well, this is going to help prove the point, right? The content and those blocks render and are separate, and you can even see it in the menu over here, right? It's picked up these colors. All of this is separate from the output. And so if I want to take the design and then we make it the horrible apartment website I made, because obviously you guys made websites for your apartments back in the day that Pittsburgh for some reason.
Wow.
Right. It is for building highly remixable, engaging web content. And yes, online courses are in that sort of a sphere.
Yeah, I can see the application of like, and for those listening, not watching video content, like Bryan's is literally switching between categories in the options, and the site's changing its entire look
immediately,
but still keeping immediately, but yet still keeping everything he just put in here. From an instructional design mentality, I could absolutely see where, like, if you built different formatting or templates for ways courses should flow, function, all based off of important learning design, UX experiences, all of that stuff, and you start to, like, I've been in this place, right? Like, I start to build out a course, and halfway through I go, I should have built it this way. Like, it should have looked like what I did on this other course. And then to Bryan's point, you end up having to make the call. Do I let my creativity drive me here? And do I change the entire course to fit this format? Or do I just keep going with what I did? Because it's going to be a lot of work to change all of this. I could see application here where if you start templatizing stuff in the system, it's so easy to just go, well, let's test it out. Let's change it over to this model, right? Like this is why I'm not joking, Bryan. I'm immediately in love with everything on the site right now. And
So did you see what I just did while you were talking?
I was not paying attention to it. I think Will was.
So I built a new HAX site from a Word document.
Yep.
Oh, what?
Yep.
And so because we are working in this, like when we've got the right mentality down about what the output should be, and we're using very modern approaches to web, like I'm not going to go into as far as microservice architecture, but I can spin up a website from a Word document if it uses the heading structure appropriately. And this capability has completely changed the way that we author courses internally.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, that would massively change it. I could see, I mean, Will, you probably had this experience too. How many times do you work with an SME who wants to drop you a Word document of what they want in the course, right? And you spend how many hours copying that over into what should be the course or that dynamic? Like, and obviously, like, there's some stuff you tweak about this once it comes out, and you're probably tweaking about the language of your subject matter expert, and like, there's still a bunch of design work that needs to be done. But the fact that that just took all that stuff out of the Word document and dropped it right in, to your point, appropriate heading structure, stuff like that, that's going to need to be in place. But that's insane.
I've never seen web development move quicker. I mean, I know you had the Word doc prepared ahead of time. That's fine. But still, the point of it is, anytime I've ever seen someone deal with a blueprint of some kind and then try and take that to the LMS and do development, there's always discovery and there's always time sunk in the practice of, all right, I'm going to need 3 screens. Let's put it over here and copying and pasting. Or, oh, maybe I can get this to import if I do it this way, but I got to turn that into quizzes, into QTI files and get the QTI file. It's like, there's so much work that goes from blueprint to development. And what you just demonstrated is, if the blueprint in your system is set correctly, it's just instantaneous.
Yeah.
Instantaneous. You did it in front of us live. It built the entire website.
You had more fun developing a fake website in the 10 minutes you were showing that to us than I've had in my entire life on the web.
I mean, this is what we're going for. I don't want, like, I bring it up and I bring it to my students in class who help engineer parts of the system. I don't want to do this anymore. And I mean it from like it's boring. This is boring to have to know, and it's limiting human creativity. And we need moonshot technologies in order to solve that. We can't just expect that a new vendor will come out and they'll totally have our fundamental ideals in mind. No, this is the point of the academy, is to push industry when it's stuck. And so I want to be able to take you saw Notion was on there as well. We have faculty members that have imported Gitbook structures directly into HAX sites, Notion structures. We migrated off Elms, that logo, using the address. I literally point to the address, which is something I did while you were gushing about the Word doc part. And I pointed to the fun thing I made, and I made a copy of the fun thing I made by just pointing to it.
Wow.
Right? It's free flowing creativity. If I went a little further, I would download that package. I would upload it into Canvas. It supports LTI for the automatic resizing of the content. It also supports SCORM at enough of a level that you could import that package statically. That whole thing could work by itself, or I give it to someone else and they, make modifications to it. We've written our documentation in the tool. Everything that you're changing is just
I'm broken.
There's files. Yes, that's what I'm going for. Yes.
So
and you would see why this may be difficult to explain, because you kind of have to. You can't envision like this is so easy to edit. Like, no, I shouldn't have to think. Like, it just edit and I'm done. And for years being told like, well, WordPress is super easy, but hearing from my students in class that don't understand how to do basic content editing in WordPress. Like, I recorded a video of like, I'm going to make 2 pages that are nested under each other in a new WordPress site. And it took me about 20 minutes to put the content on those pages. And then in 2 minutes, I had made a 20-page outline in HAX.
Wow.
So like, I got beyond those first 2 things in like a minute. And yes, I know how to use that system, obviously, but like it need not be hard. I just want to be on the internet at the end. Like, I shouldn't have to think about these things.
Yeah. Bryan, I do mean this. This will probably not be the last time we talk to you, because this is coolest freaking thing I've seen all day. For the sake of time on our episode and stuff of what we're at, how does someone, is it just as easy as going to that link that you shared, hax.psu.edu, to go create a HAX site and get involved? How does someone, especially somebody who might not be from Penn State, how does somebody get involved with this?
So when I hit start on that website, what you didn't see is it brokered a login with our Azure instance. And so if you're a member of Penn State, yes, I get a copy automatically built there. The button next to it said like Learn HAX. That website has everything about the project, where developers can go to download it, how to install it on different services. The easiest way for people to get a copy of it and start working, I'd say, is probably with Reclaim Cloud or Reclaim Hosting, just because they have like a button you click, as if it was, like Website Tonight. If you're installing WordPress, is another one of their popular things. So if you're not a developer, I'd say probably going there. But honestly, finding someone that knows how to install a basic PHP package and then it's there running, or a Node package. We're trying to get it so that you have a desktop app and that you could just download the desktop app and be authoring on your computer in a web native format that you could just throw up anywhere.
Then load to whatever your host is.
You need it to. Okay.
Well, all right,
that's super helpful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you. If you want to find Bryan on the internet, it's at BTO Pro. But thanks, Bryan. I appreciate you taking the time, and look forward to the next opportunity.
Anytime. Always here to talk.
As we do the slow return, thank you, Bryan, for taking the time with us today. That was an awesome episode. I agree with what Josh set us up in the beginning here. Is like, hey, hang on, hold on, it's gonna be great. Once Bryan starts showing it off, you can't but blow your eyes out of your head. Like it was stunning. It's stunning to see what it's capable of doing and how much work has gone into it. And I just love any system that has a sarcasm tag. You got my attention.
Yes, that won me over immediately. The sarcasm tag was just like, it's what I've always wanted on the internet. It was just
the idea that they could build tags, build content blocks, frankly, that work for their purpose and that can bring personality, flavor, attitude to something, right? Like Bryan was showing a couple of those different themes and such, and frankly, like he's like, hey, here's this one from my first website, and here's this one from it's like, yeah, they look old and dingy, but he was making the point, like, I can make this look like anything, and it can really bring a lot of opportunity to it. What I wanted to recount, I don't know why this didn't come up in the call, but I first sought Bryan out at Penn State for OER purposes. OER is Open Educational Resources. I had a faculty member at my campus who was very interested in developing OER materials. Specifically Spanish and art were the two faculty I was working with. They wanted to create courses that would be available to the entire institution. Well, OER is great. You can make content in a Word document if you want to, right? But like the idea of making an OER course that is accessible to other campuses or anyone else takes a lot of work. And that's where I first knocked on Bryan's door. Like, hey, I found this thing and it looks like you can you're making OER courses, and could I do this? And his, answer then was, of course, how do I set you up? How do I get going? Blah, blah, blah. Like, he was trying to give me all this information. And I was like, I don't know how to do any of this. Like, it was over my head at the time. Now I'm looking at going, oh, if only I had been able to do that stuff, I might be one of his Joker minions. Like, it would just be great to say today I could have been one of the HAX people. I think Bryan would still invite me today if I asked, but
probably
it's just not my space.
You missed out on your chance. It's
that's
right.
all right.
No, I think what I really like about this episode, it's interesting when Will first brought this up, because Will knows Bryan. That's the first time I met Bryan is in the episode. And when I remember when you brought this up with me, I think you originally weren't sure what my thoughts were going to be on this type of episode, because you and I hadn't talked about this topic before.
Yeah. By the way, I got this weird thing that we could talk about.
Will didn't know is I literally had a project at my last job in my project list that kept getting pushed back because of other priorities, called Headless CMS and Headless Management. And the reason it was in my list is because as somebody in design world trying to design courses, but not only that, right? Is I have a philosophical belief that from a project management side and from a design side, that getting to a finished product faster, not like a completely finished product, but something that looks like what the product is going to look like, allows us to be more creative and also figure out, kind of fail faster in a design flow, and figure out some of those problems a little bit quicker than what we would do spending hours in a document that's not where things are going to be, right? And so what Headless CMS at the end of the day for me allowed us to systemize creativity in some ways so that people could pull in blocks of different types of content and templates so that they didn't have to try. So it wasn't quite like this big project to go, I want this super interactive page where people can click around. Our team outside of a course design could create that. And then somebody in a course design could go, oh, cool, I can just pull that block in and be creative with it without having to reinvent the wheel, right? Is what I see Headless authoring kind of help do. And we see that with Bryan. I never realized that in my project because I didn't have anybody like Bryan. I don't know the stuff that Bryan knows. And all my research seemed very complicated. And so I just kind of backed off from it because we had other priorities at the time. But looking at what Bryan's doing, the joy that I think comes across all our faces when Bryan's literally just like live building a course, like nothing, like he's inputting information to a form and things are just happening. Like imagine that experience with a subject matter expert or an instructor that you're working with, being able to literally sit down with them in a meeting and go, well, what if we tried this, this, and this, and literally just lay it out in an instant. Not fully thought out, not fully baked, but close enough that they can see the vision you're seeing, right? Like that's what I love about the idea of a headless authoring tool and this type of concept of this block design feature in the internet. Put aside the fact that I also love Bryan's philosophy of like a more accessible, shareable internet that's not locked behind companies who totally care about your best interests, not their bottom line. That's been proven over the last couple of years. That's when they laid off tons of people. They said, I love people. Sorry.
Go for them. Yeah. Go for the jugular. Not like we want any of them to be our sponsors, Squarespace. Yeah. So the thing that I think, to piggyback off of that is important in this whole story is actually about something like Weebly, Wix, Squarespace. Like we mentioned two of those or a few of those in the interview itself, but like headless authoring says, let me make a website and then I'll put it anywhere I want. Mm-hmm. Squarespace says, use my specific tools to make a website on my platform. If you want that website to take it somewhere else, it's probably not going to work. You can take the text, you can take the pictures out, but if you did any special floaty things, any special parallax feelings or scrolls or whatever, it's not necessarily going to just go one-to-one from Squarespace over to Weebly over to Wix. That's actually the point of headless authoring, right? Like I shouldn't need to go and buy Wix's product to make a website. And that website I make on Wix's platform shouldn't be Wix's. It's mine. It's my website. It's my material. I wrote it. I created it. I drafted it, whatever. Wix is monetizing an authoring system to make it easy for you because I don't know how to code. Weebly, Squarespace, that's what they're doing. They're creating an authoring system for you to create a platform, create a website to put out there that looks good. I'm not denying that their products do that well.
Yeah. I mean, we use Squarespace for the company, like, right. So like, obviously we're not totally opposed to them. We've used them for things.
But if you want to be able to take that, it's like this painting up here on my wall. Like if I take that painting off the wall, it's my painting. I'll take it and put it on that wall or whatever. If I have a website on Wix, I can't necessarily do that. And that's the point of headless. Let's build the website so you can put it wherever you want to host it. Bryan references Reclaim hosting and a couple tools like that, Reclaim Cloud, Reclaim Hosting. I've looked at them in the past. They're very education friendly, but that's just a hosting service where you could build everything on HAX and load it up on Reclaim. Boom, done. And now if you left Reclaim hosting, you go to GoDaddy, BlueGator, any of the hosting platforms that are out there. I think that's the first time I've ever punched my mic. I'm so sorry. and just take your HAX website anywhere you want to a different host, or build your own server and put it on your own server if you're going to figure out all the technical stuff to make it a publicly accessible website.
I think that's
I loved
a selling point for Bryan too. Like, we had this conversation afterwards, but because like I can already hear we're not big enough to have many of them, if any of them, but I can already hear like the angry internet troll going like, well, Bryan wants to, you know, open the internet more, but he's just doing what Squarespace is doing. He's creating his own platform that people need to author in. But the reality is what Bryan's creating is something it is much more transferable. Yes, right now, if you don't want to go through all the stuff he's talking about, first of all, you can't even go fully through HAX because they're locked down behind a specific institution. But like, yes, you'd have to go through them to do that. But you don't have to. Like, you can go a different direction, and you could even go through them to build it and then easily take that formatting, and it will work on any other hosting platform. That is something that Squarespace, Wix, none of them are offering. That is not something that can happen.
I think it's a comparison I'd like to make, that Wix, Weebly, Squarespace, those types of website things are kind of like paint by number. You know, you get the colors painted from them, you get the little outline, you paint by number, right? Bryan is trying to hand you a set of paint and a canvas and saying, good luck. Like, that's both freeing and terrifying. There's a little more structure to Bryan's work and to the HAX system than that. But, you know, Wix and Weebly, it's like paint by number. If you don't paint in the numbers, it's not going to look like anything. You have to do it their way. And he's opening that freedom up. So, I don't think it'll be the last time we hear from Bryan. Clearly, we spent a lot. This is a longer episode. We had a lot of fun here in the opening and even in the debrief and throughout the whole interview talking with Bryan. So I think it'll be a good opportunity to see how he continues to develop the platform, how it works in the world and society. But I think that's a wrap on 168. Next episode, 169. We have a very long script of ideas of what this episode is going to be.
We have not,
in short,
narrowed it.
Episode 169 is actually going to be talking about flipping work, much like flipping the classroom. If you're familiar with a flipped classroom, we're going to be talking about what it might look like to flip work. We're still ironing out the title. That's a working title, but we'll get back to that soon. So make sure you turn in next week for episode 169. That'll be at all of our usual places and all of our socials, etc., etc. That's a wrap, folks, on another week. Empowering minds.
Bracing tech. Cheers.
Cheers.